I think if there's really one theme to today, Matthew, it is obfuscation. We've got the Biden administration this is big news, the Biden administration changing the transcript of Biden's garbage comment in that whole Zoom call. They changed the transcript to make it look like he did not say what he said about Donald Trump supporters. You've got them going after Donald Trump, saying that he has violent rhetoric against Liz Cheney. I was talking about that earlier. Is not the case. We'll go over that. And just, obviously there's a lot going on. And none of it has to do with the actual issues of this campaign.
Well, this is Nixon-level obfuscation, the famous turning off the recorder in the White House. But this has already permeated the culture. But no, this is Nixon-level obfuscation. But last night in Washington, D.C., there were hundreds of Halloween parties, and I can tell you hundreds, if not thousands of people were dressed in trash bags and MAGA hats. This has permeated the culture in the last week of the campaign. It doesn't matter what Karine Jean-Pierre says or what the White House does to the transcript in the culture. Now, there could be some legal implications there, but the American people know what Joe Biden said. This is the basket of deplorables moment. This is just another step toward understanding what the left thinks about Donald Trump supporters. And I'll tell you, Dan, for the first time since 2016, I ran into the closet the other night and grabbed my Make America Great Again hat, which I haven't busted out of storage since the week after the 2016 convention. And the vibe is good for Republicans and for Donald Trump, regardless of what Joe Biden calls his supporters, regardless of what Kamala Harris says on the campaign trail. This is truly the campaign of joy and excitement in the last 4 days of the election.
So, and I would agree with you, but I am seeing in Wisconsin and also in Pennsylvania, Harris is beginning to see, some movement upwards. Trump is still winning in Pennsylvania, but in some of the other states, Harris is seeing a reversal of her misfortune from the last couple of weeks. And so one of the questions I would have, and specifically in Wisconsin, but that's just hard for me to believe. Like, are these polls at this point, with the disaster after disaster that Kamala Harris has seen, that, she would start to see a reversal of what we have seen in the last couple of weeks?
We will see just a little bit of movement, and it looks like in Wisconsin we're seeing that. And here is what I would caution to Trump supporters, and in particular the Trump campaign. We saw a little bit of a too early celebration moment yesterday and over the last couple of days on social media from some Trump campaign staff. Trump supporters have to put the pedal to the metal and keep moving forward, because, again, we've got 4 more days. After this interview, I'm driving an older woman to the polls. We've got another situation down in Woodbridge where I'm moving a voter to the polls. We've got to do the hard work to make sure that every single voter turns out. And those crosstabs, those 1 out of 4 voters, those 0 out of 4 voters are still overwhelmingly supporting Republican candidates. And those are numbers that will not be reflected in the polls.
Yep.
These are individuals who do not get calls because they are not on the radar as people who vote in these elections. And so it is up to supporters of Donald Trump and our Republican candidates to do everything they can in the last 4 days.
I want to just to tell you how insane things are at CNN. I just saw a headline. Let me pull up the audio. But I just saw a headline. Apparently now, Liz Cheney has responded to Donald Trump's comment that Liz Cheney should be fired upon. Now, that is not even close to what Donald Trump said. Basically what he said, and I'm pulling up the audio here real quick. It was kind of a last minute story for yours truly. What Donald Trump basically said was, no, she is a war hawk, and if she was in war, she would have a different opinion as to the stance on war. Because if you've got a bunch of guns pointed at your face, then you're going to have a different opinion. And he talks about, the war hawks out there that are, what's the best way to put this? That from the convenience and the comfort of their offices, send our men and women to war. And I'm of course trying to find, it's been a rough day here. Here's the comment from Donald Trump, just so you can see the difference.
And I don't blame him for sticking with his daughter, but his daughter is a very dumb individual, very dumb. She's a radical war hawk. Let's put her with a rifle standing there with 9 barrels shooting at her, okay? Let's see how she feels about it. When the guns are trained on her face. They're all war hawks when they're sitting in Washington in a nice building saying, oh, gee, let's send 10,000 troops right into the mouth of the enemy.
Yeah, so, that's Donald Trump clearly not saying that Liz Cheney should be fired upon.
As a libertarian, I am so excited that non-interventionism and foreign adventurism are, we're having these conversations. The decision makers who put our men and women in jeopardy in places where we don't have a national interest, or we don't have something pressing in the foreign policy space. They're all based in McLean. They're about 15 minutes from where I'm sitting right now. People like Liz Cheney, people like Dick Cheney. And for the better part of 20 years, Democrats called Dick Cheney a war criminal. They attacked those who got us into Iraq and Afghanistan, and now to embrace them so strongly in this campaign is actually quite shocking. But it shows a shift. It shows a shift of an American public that is tired of foreign policy adventurism that doesn't directly impact or affect America's interests. And I think this is a good conversation to have. In the 4 years of the last Donald Trump administration, he got us into no new wars. These are troublesome times, and I think it takes a clear-headed leader who isn't quick to send men and women into combat, and who isn't quick to engage in this capacity, and instead engage in diplomacy. And we saw President Trump, in 4 years of his first administration, go in and, in his New York style, sort of strong arm many of these leaders into not moving into a place where we've got men and women in uniform on the front lines. And that's encouraging. It's quite discouraging to see the Democrats embrace this war hawk wing of the Republican Party so strongly.
It is bizarre. 645 on Super Talk 99.7, and Matthew Hurt is joining us. There is a new poll out that shows the moment Kamala may have fatally changed the course of this election on WTN. A new poll shows the moment Kamala may have fatally changed the course of this election. It was this moment on The View.
Would you have done something differently than President Biden during the past 4 years?
There is not a thing that comes to mind in terms of, and I've been a part of most of the decisions that have had impact.
Well, if anything...
Yeah, they looked at the numbers, and they're looking at the fact that was the moment where a lot of people looked at this candidate, knowing what the last 3.5 years have been like, and for her to say, I can't think of anything, that may have been a game changer.
Absolutely. And this is something where, on the economy, on foreign policy, on respect on the world stage, the American people have seen a stark contrast. And for her to say, I'm going to be just like the last guy or just like the current guy, this means, what the Trump campaign messaging is, that the Biden-Harris agenda would continue under Kamala Harris as president. This is resonating. It is the right message to draw a contrast. We talk about candidates who want to introduce themselves. Of course, everybody knows who Donald Trump is. Yep. And then candidates who want to articulate the issues. And then in the final stage of the campaign, the candidates draw a contrast with one another, and the contrast could not be clearer. Electing Kamala Harris on Tuesday would be a continuation of the failed policies of the Biden administration.
So there's a crazy debate out there, Matthew, about whether or not Joe Biden actually wants Kamala Harris to win. And it's interesting because I was talking earlier about how Kamala Harris has surrounded herself with all of these different surrogates. And you've got Barack Obama basically telling young black men that you are sexist and misogynist if you don't vote for Kamala Harris. You've also got Mark Cuban. He he said this the other day.
Donald Trump, you never see him around strong, intelligent women, ever. It's just that simple.
And that as well, clearly a blunder, because Donald Trump has surrounded himself with strong women, including Kellyanne Conway and Tulsi Gabbard and others. And now social media is just on fire with strong women, intelligent women who are answering Mark Cuban. I've got some of that audio coming up in the next hour. But from Joe Biden to Barack Obama to now Mark Cuban, I mean, I'm no fan of Kamala Harris, but she must be thinking, what the hell are these guys doing?
The Harris campaign and their surrogates and their supporters are grasping at straws. You and I have talked on and on about the various demographics, the kinds of voters who go to the polls and vote for these candidates. We know that Kamala Harris is struggling with male voters, particularly young men, but it appears as though this is their last line of attack beyond the fascism, beyond comparing Donald Trump to Hitler. We're going to try to make this one more wedge against female voters, because we know that suburban women, primarily white women, voted for Donald Trump in 2016. They helped elect Donald Trump. And this is just another instance of the Harris campaign attempting to divide a demographic, a segment of the of the electorate, to try to drive the point home. And it's unclear whether this will land. It doesn't sound like it will. We're seeing in Arlington, where I live, a lot of women voters who ignore the Democrat sample ballot and go in and vote for Donald Trump and our Republican candidates. And I just think this is another element of a flailing campaign in the last days trying to divide the American people even further.
All right, Matthew Hurt, always great commentary. How can folks find you on X?
I'm on X at Matthew Hurt, MatthewHurtt.